نادوا حسمت إنها قد رسمت فأتاهم ردنا صعقت بل. The concerns around America's decision to launch a military attack on Venezuela and kidnapping its president, Nicolas Maduro, continues to escalate. With the US President Donald Trump already announcing that the US will be receiving millions of barrels of oil from that country. Trump said Saturday that the United States will run Venezuela and tap into its huge oil reserves. And this after kidnapping its leader, Nicolas Maduro, out of the country during a bombing raid on Caracas. So tell us more about this and an update on the story. We are joined on the line by Alie Komape of the South African Latin American Association. Ali, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for taking out your time and joining us on Radio Islam International.
Walaikum salam, and thank you for having us.
It's good to have you with us. Now, before we get into the story itself, could you tell us who and what is the South African Latin American Association?
The South African Latin American Association is a group of South Africans who have come together, together with their counterparts in Latin America, to form a friendship type of arrangement. This is similar to, let's say, the anti-apartheid movement of the 1970s and 60s. This is people globally around across the world who had an interest in what's happening in South Africa and have formed a band together. So we are a group of South Africans, including those who are from Latin America in South Africa, that have shared interest in not only politics but academia, culture, and so on in Latin America.
Now, looking at how this is unfolded, Ali, what would you say is America or the West's main objective? Is it to put a government in place, or is it that they're just after Venezuela's oil to get their hands on the country's large oil resources?
The thing about the guy who's in Washington in the capital now, the White House, he has a tendency of saying the first thing that comes to his mind. A number of times he has said that he is after the oil in Venezuela. So Donald Trump wants the oil in Venezuela. Whatever means he uses, that's not the point. He wants the oil. He wants to run Venezuela's oil. He has said that many times. I think on the latest one, I think 2 days back, they asked him, a journalist asked him, what do you say to those who say that you're only after Venezuela's oil? He says, exactly, we are in the oil business. So they want the oil of Venezuela. He believes that Venezuela owes him and his government oil, barrels and barrels in their millions. That's what he says. He has said now, currently, that Venezuela is going to send through millions of barrels of oil to him so that he can sell, and that money will be administered by him. So he wants the oil. Everything else is a sideshow. It's a smoke screen. He wants the oil, and unfortunately, he lacks sophistication. So he has said he wants the oil. There's nothing intellectually sophisticated about what he wants to do. You know, in the past, America would have some way of invading countries. We want to spread democracy. We want to help rebel groups and so on. But in this particular instance, he has never said people of Venezuela. He has never said anything. He has given, he has given a lame excuse that President Nicolas Maduro is a narco terrorist. He has not supported. He's not supported by any evidence. And then he went and got him. But his ultimate point is the oil, and he has said so himself.
Now, you mentioned there that Donald Trump had said that Venezuela owes us oil. Now, there have been reports, or what they have said is that they have got legitimate contracts with Venezuela for their oil, and these are contracts that the president did not honor.
Just to give context, when the revolution happened in the early 2000, when Hugo Chavez took over as president of Venezuela, he then reviewed the contracts that were held by American companies. Part of those contracts were exploitative, were criminal. Let's give the listeners at home an example here. When the apartheid government was close to collapse, a number of white Afrikaner companies entered into criminal contract with the government at the time, knowing that the apartheid government is going to collapse. There'll be a new democratic government, but those contracts are still going to be valid. For instance, there were contracts of leases of land for 100 years for 1 rand. We know this. There were contracts that were signed with ESCOM for giving ESCOM coal for ridiculous amounts of money with Anglo. So these contracts were criminal, and they had every right in Venezuela to cancel those contracts when the new government came in. In any case, we're not in a discussion of contract law here on how contracts are valid when governments change and so on and so forth. But the fact here is that the contracts were cancelled. They were given a reason why they were cancelled, and the natural resources of Venezuela were nationalized to the people of Venezuela. They don't owe anything to the Trump administration or to Americans or his companies. There was no criminality involved in canceling those events. In fact, when the Venezuela right-wing regime at the past time before Hugo Chavez entered in these agreements, that was a criminal contract, a criminal relationship.
And then also, there's been these feelings of people perhaps in Venezuela, or feelings that have been shared by America, saying that the president, Maduro, had lost the last elections. Majority of people were not happy with him. He was oppressing his people and oppressing the opposition as well.
Absolute madness. This is the same guy, by the way, Malana, who said that in the 2020, if I'm not mistaken, who said that the elections that Biden won were stolen. Uh, he said that the election results were illegitimate. Did anyone come in and abduct President Biden and install him as president? No, because he's delusional, he's crazy. In this country, Molana, there's a guy who is a former president, by the way, of this country, who has delegitimized our elections here. Former President Jacob Zuma and his MK party have went to the global media and have went to the world and said the elections in this country are illegitimate. Not true. That does not mean if people contest the elections, is the elections are illegitimate. It's not true. That's the nature of democracy. By the way, democracy works like that. Losers are often disgruntled. Losers are often disingenuous in their accusations. So the elections in Venezuela are quite transparent. By the way, South Africa and the South African government, some South African officials from other political parties as well went to observe the last presidential elections in Venezuela that Maduro won legitimately and fairly. So there are those who will always question elections that when they lose, including Donald Trump. It does not mean the elections are illegitimate. So those who are saying Maduro is an illegitimate president are just beating the same drum as the opposition that loses to Maduro in Venezuela day in and day out.
And what do you feel that America want to do? Do they want to put a government in place that the Venezuelans will be happy and that will serve the people of Venezuela, or just putting in a puppet regime, in place that answers to the U.S. And answers to Washington?
They've said that they want the fellow who lost. I think, excuse me, the fellow who lost the presidential election. I think a couple of 6 or so years ago, they still recognize him as a president. They want him to be a president. So they want to install a public government, definitely. But this won't be easy. The military of Venezuela still recognizes the government of the day as a legitimate government. The judiciary of Venezuela still recognizes the government of the day as the true government. The institutions that are there, the state institutions still recognize the government of the day as the true government. So we are not sure how Trump is going to go about this. In fact, the deputy president of Venezuela has now been sworn in by the Supreme Court. Parallel to what we would call a constitutional court in South Africa, they've recognized her as an acting president in the role of Maduro. We don't know how he's planning on doing this. How is he planning on convincing all these institutions, all these arms of government to immediately divorce their legitimate government to the government that he wants. It's not clear exactly what he wants, but he has said that what he wants is the oil, and there have been some indication we cannot confirm that the government of Venezuela was going to give him the oil in exchange for peace and in exchange for him leaving them alone. But we don't know how he's going to go about this regime change, because it's simply the people of Venezuela, the arms of government, the arms of state, are not interested in his proposal.
And finally, Ali, you're closer to home, right? The South African government have condemned these attacks on Venezuela. Yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa, speaking at an event here in Soweto, had said that they're calling for the immediate release of the Venezuelan president. But should the country be worried that speaking out against Trump will antagonize the U.S. president even further?
Oh, definitely. Look, we've said this a number of times before. You have in the White House an unhinged, raging lunatic as a president, someone who believes anything and everything he's been told. I mean, for instance, he continues to believe there's a white genocide in South Africa, even though even when people who told him those lies are reneging on those lies, he keeps on he contending on those lies being true. I remember there's when President Ramaphosa made a visit to him to get his audience on this particular misinformation. There was a photo of grave sites in Congo. And when Kalikrid in AfriForum went to him, they showed him those photos, and it was a lie when he was being told. When he was being told, no, this is a misrepresentation. This is a lie. This is not in the Congo, not in South Africa. He said, no, this is in South Africa, and he believes it. So this is a lunatic. This is a crazy person. You can't reason with him. He's not rational, nor does he use logic. So South Africa should be concerned, definitely. But this is echoing voices from the entire Latin America, the progressive governments of Latin America in Colombia, for instance, are saying this is time then when we unite. We simply cannot say every man on their own. It's not possible. South Africa, in its defense of human rights internationally, when we look into its case in the ICJ against Israel, that the US wants them to drop its position on Venezuela. So South Africa must now call on progressive allies within the continent that the target might be on our back. Therefore, it's not far-fetched that President Ramaphosa be prepared for anything that the raging, crazy lunatic Donald Trump can come.
Ali, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing such insightful perspectives with us this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and salam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi